You see, there are probably like 5,000 videos about mac and cheese on YouTube, but I don't know, they're basically all the same. So I thought, why not do one myself? But we're gonna change things up a bit. I mean, there's kind of a form of mac and cheese in Germany. It's called Kässpätzle. You've maybe heard of it. I like to eat it, and probably you'll like it too. I mean, it's cheese and a lot of carbs. Who doesn't like that? So let's start this. So we're gonna start this recipe off by weighing off 300 grams of spelt flour. You could also use semolina. Just make sure your flour has a high enough gluten content. So 2 good pinches of salt, a good amount of nutmeg. You could substitute that for black pepper, but I personally love nutmeg in it. Give it a little mix, set it aside. So next thing is our eggs. Yeah, well, maybe not this egg. So 6 eggs or 300 grams. I'll whisk those eggs up. I like to use tweezers. You could also use chopsticks or a fork. Just make sure you don't incorporate too much air. So make a little well with your hands. Pour in those eggs. Now to incorporate the eggs into the flour, I again like to use tweezers. You could also again use chopsticks, because they're easier to clean than a whisk. So you should see the eggs and flour coming together pretty fast. Put your tweezers aside, get your hands dirty, and we have to slap that dough now. Now, if you got nosy neighbors like I do, put a towel underneath your bowl and slap it away. Now, you really don't want to be gentle with this. Just smack it around, let out all your anger, because we want that gluten forming, we want this nice texture to it, because otherwise you're gonna get this soggy mess floating around in your water and nobody likes that. Just cover it with a plate, or like I'm doing here with plastic wrap. Maybe don't use plastic wrap, but yeah, sorry for that. Next, continue with your onions. So I personally hate peeling onions, so we don't have to show that, you get the idea. Always remember to recycle, guys. After the studious process of peeling them, halve your onions and then cut them lengthwise into fine strips like I'm doing here. Just look how beautiful that is. After cutting your onions, you want to get a heavy bottom pan or a cast iron skillet. Squirt in a good amount of vegetable oil, and yes, I did say squirt. Now we don't really want to saute these onions, we just want them to melt, so we're gonna salt them right away. Now this is gonna draw out a lot of moisture and they're cooking in their own juices. So maybe turn down your heat a little bit, let them sit, let them chill out, sweat off, get a little brown, like you are doing. It's summer. So just stir them once in a while, every so often. We're basically cooking onion jam here. So throw in a piece of butter, pinch of sugar, transfer them to a bowl. Season with white wine vinegar. You could also use balsamic, but they should have a nice tang to them. So now to the other half of our onions, we're gonna fry these off. So if you don't have a deep fryer like I do, just take a pot and a lot of oil. So while the oil is heating up, take your onions, drench them in cornstarch. Make sure that every little piece is nicely coated. Now the cornstarch catches up a lot of excess moisture that prevents our onions from getting crispy. Now before throwing our onions in, always check your temperature. Now you could use a pair of chopsticks or a wooden spoon or your tweezers. Or if you happen to have a digital thermometer, make sure the oil is about 140 degrees Celsius or 285 Fahrenheit. Now dust off your excess cornstarch and fry those off in batches just for safety measures. Now when frying in a pot, stir constantly until they're golden brown and crispy. Take them out and drain them well. Put them on a piece of cloth or a kitchen towel. Salt them right away, toss them around a bit, make sure every piece gets a little bit of salt, and set them aside. Now to the cheese, guys. So I like to use different types of cheeses. Here I've got 2 blocks of Gruyere and 1 block of German Alpine cheese. I mean, from here you're free to go. You could use Comté or Emmenthal. Just make sure it's a hard cheese because we want to grate this pretty fine. Heat up a pot of water. Now I like to use my pan as a lid just to slowly melt some butter in it. Now by the time your water is starting to simmer and your butter is melted, take the pan off, take a generous amount of salt and throw it in the cooking water. Now we can go over to the fun part, scraping our spätzle. You'll need a flat board and a dough scraper for this. Now if you're using a wooden board like I do, I would always recommend to water your board a bit. I also like to dip my spoon into the hot water to prevent the dough from sticking to it. If you're doing this the first time, I would always recommend to use less dough. Now don't be too ambitious at the beginning, you'll only get frustrated. Before you start to scrape, make sure your dough scraper is wet, as well as your dough, and use that scraper to thin out your dough a bit. The thinner your dough, the thinner your spätzle will be. And make sure your water isn't on a rolling boil. We just want to slightly poach those spätzle. If they're floating on top, they're done. You can take them out, put them right into the pan with your melted butter, and continue with your scraping. So we're gonna season them with around 10 black peppercorns. Freshly ground, of course. I mean, guys, this is 2020. You have to grind your spices. Now sprinkle some of that freshly ground pepper over your spätzle and mix them through. Now take your cheese and throw it into the spätzle, mix it through, make sure it's nicely distributed. Make sure to drip some of that starchy cooking water inside so you end up having kind of a sauce and they don't dry out. If you're left with around 1/3 of the cheese, sprinkle it on top in a nice even layer. Take your caramelized onion jam and drape it over. When it's evenly distributed, take your spätzle, put them into an oven 180 Celsius or 355 Fahrenheit for around 15 minutes. Now as a garnish, we're gonna cut up some spring onions. I only use the green part in this recipe, but of course don't throw the white part away, just put it aside and use it for something else. I like to use these old jam glasses to put stuff in because, well, they're basically for free. And they have a lid, so you can just close them up, put them into a fridge if you have anything left over, and plus they look kind of nice. So after around 15 minutes, take out your spätzle. Now take those crunchy onions that we fried off and cover your spätzle with their crunchy, savory deliciousness. So as a garnish, I'm using more of those crunchy onions and of course some of our green spring onion. And all there's left now is take a fork and dig in. Look at that cheesy goodness. I hope you guys liked the video. Subscribe down below, leave a like on the video, and see you next time.